I'm Caroline Nursey, Clerk of Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees and a member of London West Area Meeting. Alongside Linda Batten, who's our Yearly Meeting Treasurer and a member of North Wales Area Meeting, I'm here to report to you, friends, on the financial position of Britain Yearly Meeting and the work that was carried out last year by staff or through grants to other organisations. We'll also explain some of the decisions that we as trustees have made and seek your advice for the coming period. But first, let me give a bit of background for those who don't spend all their time immersed in Quaker governance. 12 Quakers are nominated by Central Nominations Committee and appointed by you for 3-year terms to serve as BYM Trustees. The Clerk and the Treasurer are nominated by Britain Yearly Meeting Trustees and also appointed by you, bringing the trustee body to 14. Our Assistant Clerk, Graham Torr, is sitting behind me there, and I'm also going to ask trustees online to raise their electronic hands so they shoot to the front page, and those here in the light to stand so that you can see who we all are. Thank you. Trustees continued to meet online during most of 2021, though we had one joyful face-to-face meeting last September. And we've continued to find that the Quaker discipline translates pretty well to online meetings for Worship for Business, but it is harder for newer trustees. And we're very much looking forward to our in-person weekend, which is in 2 weeks' time, where we'll have space both for considered discernment and time to get to know each other better in matters practical and eternal. It won't come as any surprise that 2021 was the second year where both our income and work were profoundly affected by the pandemic. It was a difficult year, and I'm grateful to Paul Parker, the recording clerk, and to the staff team that he leads for everything that they've delivered in these extraordinary times. Before talking about the work, let me hand over to Linda to explain where we stand financially.
Hello, friends. It's good to be able to present the accounts to you today, both in person and on screen. And I hope you will have read not only the more visual annual review telling you about the work undertaken by Britain Yearly Meeting last year, but also the annual report and accounts, which includes the financial statements for 2021. Last year was another atypical year for the yearly meeting in terms of finances. Let's start with the headline figures. Our income last year was £10 million, a drop of £6 million on the previous year. Our expenditure was £9 million, a drop of £3 million on the previous year. We had a surplus of £1 million, though I'll explain shortly why we shouldn't get too excited about that. Looking at the income, you may have noticed that donations from friends and meetings fell back to its more usual level of around £2 million. Some of you will remember that in 2020, we received £3 million, and we're hopeful you might be able to continue at this higher level of giving to provide scope to do more work on your behalf. As we know, there's no shortage of work in the world that needs to be done. But in the face of continued hardship, closures due to the pandemic and inflation, we appreciate it's not been possible for you, friends, or your meetings to maintain this higher level. Of those of you involved in letting meeting houses will know, lockdowns in the early part of the year and continually changing guidelines made it difficult for customers to plan events. The Quiet Company was affected in the same way, so there was no profit gifted from the Quiet Company to yearly meeting at the year end. For legacies last year, we budgeted £2.5 million, So the income of £4 million exceeded our expectations and is the main reason why our overall income, despite the lack of income from the quiet company, was pretty much as we'd budgeted. Our expenditure dropped significantly from 12 million in 2020 to under 9 million in 2021. We have been working for the past few years on ways to decrease our planned expenditure so that it would be equal with our planned income. But last year's drop in expenditure was much greater than planned because yearly meeting gathering was held online rather than in person, and there was far less staff and committee travel than budgeted. A combination of higher legacy income, lower expenditure than planned, along with a rise in both the value of our investments and the value of our properties, means that both our overall reserves and our available reserves have increased. However, much of this is a paper increase. The value of our investments rose by 6 million towards the end of 2021, but it has pretty much been wiped out now, with a fall of well over 10% in the value of investments over the last few months. The revaluation of our properties increases the value of our reserves, but not the money available to spend. We face 3 key risks. Inflation. You'll be aware from your own experience, as well as the news, that we're living in a period of high inflation. This impacts on our costs, particularly for the quiet company, but for the charity as well. 2, our higher operating costs, which is more relevant to the charity. Our operating costs have been low during the pandemic, when most activity has been online. With more in-person events this year, travel and accommodation costs will increase again, and they make up a significant proportion of the budget. And thirdly, we risk the quiet company not returning to profit. It's early days still for them. There is an increase in room bookings here in Friends House, and therefore reason for optimism. But recruitment of hospitality staff continues to be challenging, and this year remains uncertain, so we don't expect to receive any gifted profit from them in this year, 2022. The higher level of reserves I mentioned earlier helps mitigate these risks, along with trustees' decision last year to draw down more from our investments over the next 2 years. However, with our 2021 income, the lowest it's been since 2009, we will need these reserves to see us through the challenges we face in the next few years. So although last year could have been worse in financial terms, we're still facing an uncertain future. My job as treasurer, our job as trustees, is to continue to use our finances effectively and efficiently to carry out the work we want to see done on behalf of you and all friends in Britain. So I ask you to continue to support our work so that it will continue into the future. Thank you.
As we reported last year, in light of all the risks that Linda outlined, trustees decided during 2020 that because of the pandemic, we would have to move to a balanced budget by 2023, which was faster than we'd previously planned. And now, with new Quaker Life and Quaker Peace and Social Witness strategies in place, and a smaller and more focused staff team, we're continuing to work on the 3 priorities agreed by trustees and Meeting for Sufferings in 2019. Thriving Quaker communities, a sustainable and peaceful world, and simple structures and practices, with everything distinctively Quaker, integrated and well-governed. Support to thriving Quaker communities rests primarily with Quaker Life, discerned by Quaker Life Central Committee, in partnership with trustees and with Meeting for Sufferings, and delivered by the Quaker Life staff team, as well as through partnerships. For those who don't know, Woodbrook is a separate organisation. BYM currently funds their work on sustainability, and we're exploring how Britain Yearly Meeting and Woodbrook should work together longer term, particularly around current Woodbrook services such as role training. This is a time of change for most organisations, and no one would have anticipated 3 years ago that Woodbrook's online meeting for worship would be so valued by friends in the UK and across the world, as we heard in ministry earlier this morning. The core of the Quaker Life strategy is getting local development workers in place across the country. And after a pause in recruitment during 2020, we will have a local development worker within reach of every Quaker meeting by this autumn. It seems as though those local development workers are providing that flexible support that friends need. I hope that's your experience, friends, except for the few meetings that haven't yet got them. They can link meetings to specialist help in Quaker life, including on prison chaplaincy, young people and safeguarding, as well as to colleagues in Quaker Peace and Social Witness, that's QPSW, for support around witness. Young people are part of thriving Quaker communities, and we heard in ministry yesterday and this morning how we want them to be fully integrated into our communities. As well as junior yearly meeting and sessions running in parallel with us here, Quaker Life staff have run online sessions for young people and others for friends working with them in local meetings. We now have youth workers in several parts of the country, funded in partnership with particular area meetings. But we fear that we aren't doing enough. Both support for our young people and this model of funding with AMs seem important for the future. And it would be very helpful to hear your experience, friends, and to know if the yearly meeting unites with the challenge we heard yesterday. And if we should be, as Britain Yearly Meeting, trying to do more through Quaker Life to ensure that young people are supported properly across the country. The second BYM priority, working towards a sustainable and peaceful world, rests principally with QPSW Central Committee, who finalised a strategy in 2020 giving more priority to the climate crisis and other issues discerned by yearly meeting in session over the past few years. In 2021, the shape of the staff team had to adapt to deliver this new strategy. Even though no one was made compulsory redundant, some QPS staff did leave and others had to face changes in their roles and teams. We know this wasn't easy for people in the midst of the pandemic. Thankfully, teams in various parts of the organisation are now settling into the roles that will help BYM deliver in integrated and distinctly Quaker ways during 2022 and beyond. As Linda said, I hope you will read the annual review and see the range of witness work that BYM is doing. There's so much darkness around the world and in this country at the moment. We heard yesterday that our faith allows us to hope and to work for what is good. I want to highlight just one piece of work, and that's around COP26. After a great deal of preparatory work, including with Meetings for Sufferings, Britain Yearly Meeting published a statement ahead of COP, and a large cohort of BYM staff attended COP itself for a fortnight of intense work, alongside Quaker United Nations Office Geneva and Quaker Council on European Affairs, both of which receive funding from BYM. We worked closely with other communities of faith and civil society. And of course, many, many Quakers from across the country, and particularly Scotland, gave witness, drawing on advice and materials that QPSW staff produced. We're waiting for a full evaluation, but it's clear that the work made a difference, particularly in pushing issues of loss and damage up the agenda. And last but not least, trustees work on the third priority, simple structures and practices, and it was led during 2021 by two trustees, Carolyn Heyman and Ellie Harding. They facilitated 5 workshops with members of Meeting for Sufferings, 2 special interest sessions at yearly meeting 2021, and then a further 17 online workshops with friends from across Britain, all aimed at developing a shared understanding of what's needed for the governance of Quaker work nationally. They've shown how we can enable more participation by a wider range of Quakers, alongside moving to simpler formal governance. It's such a joy, friends, to be with many of you here in the room after reporting into a computer screen for the last 2 years. And to have friends participating both physically and virtually highlights new possibilities that can help us be simpler and more inclusive in our practices. Though there's still a lot of work to be done to see what the right balance is and the best ways of doing this. We must search for the right path, as have Quakers of previous generations. Quaker Faith and Practice 1204 quotes from New Life from Old Roots, 1965. The great aim of a Christian community is to enable its members to know what their gift is, and then to enable them to exercise it to the glory of God. This may sometimes involve a prolonged and perhaps painful exercise before some members come to accept that the gift they have to offer is not the one they thought. Trustees will continue to work closely with Meeting for Sufferings on proposals for simplification. We don't yet know where we will be led. As ideas continue to emerge, we hope to test them with friends across the yearly meeting, as well as with Meeting for Sufferings, ahead of full discernment at yearly meeting in session in 2023.